What's going on, guys? It's Fight Season MMA, and today I want to do a UFC rankings list of my most fun fighters to watch within the UFC organization. Remember, this is my opinion on who the most fun fighters in the UFC organization are to watch, so let's get right into the video. Okay, so at number 10, I have Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland is one of my favorite fighters because he not only always is in fun fights, but he always talks within the octagon. The fights he loses against Michael Venom Page was still an incredibly fun fight to watch. I know he was getting pieced up for most of that fight, but you look at that second round where Kevin Holland ended up getting that takedown, and that was so fun to see. Kevin Holland's fight with Jack Della Maddalena wasn't much to enjoy, but the fight against Michelle Alexiachuk, Michael Chiesa, Santiago Ponzinibbio were some of the most fun fights where Kevin Holland got finishes in the first round and second round in all those fights. Ultimately, Kevin Holland is one of those fighters that every single time he steps in the octagon, you are going to get a great performance and someone who is always active within the UFC organization. At number 9, I have Corey Sandhagen, and Corey Sandhagen is one of the most fun fighters within the UFC organization because he is able to switch up his techniques, his takedowns, and his shots that he throws every single time. You look, he has some of the craziest knockouts within the UFC. The spinning wheel kick versus Marlon Moraes and the flying knee versus Frankie Edgar. I know in his last fight, Corey Sandhagen tore his tricep, I think, versus Rob Font, and he wasn't able to really perform to the best of his abilities. But Corey Sandhagen is top 5 highest IQ fighters within the UFC organization, and he is one of the most fun fighters to watch, considering that he switches up all of his techniques, and no one knows what is coming in their direction. At number 8, I have Tom Aspinall, and Tom Aspinall, all you need to know is he is the king of first round finishes. You look in his last 2 fights. You got the finish against Marcin Tybura about a minute into the fight, and the finish against Sergey Pavlovich about 2 minutes into the fight. Tom Aspinall always delivers. He is such an unorthodox heavyweight for the fact that he is so well-rounded. He can grapple, he can wrestle, he has Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he is so unbelievably fast, and that is something that gives him such a massive advantage within the UFC octagon. No one knows what's coming in the direction when they step in the octagon with Tom Aspinall, and that is something that I truly think is going to benefit him in every single fight that he takes. You know, a fight against John Jones and Tom Aspinall was such an interesting fight because John Jones is usually faster, stronger than most opponents, and bigger than most opponents, but Tom Aspinall beats him in every single category like that. So I think Tom Aspinall is one of the most fun fighters to watch, and most times he steps in the octagon, his fight does not last that long. At number 7, I have Max Holloway, and this ranking has jumped Max Holloway up especially against his last 2 fights against the Korean Zombie and Justin Gaethje. Max Holloway is so entertaining every single time he steps in the octagon, whether it's just with kicks and his technical boxing ability. You look at the Calvin Kattar fight where Calvin Kattar lasted all 5 rounds, but that was one of the most dominant performances the UFC has ever seen, where he landed upwards of 400 significant strikes or 300 significant strikes in one singular fight. Max Holloway now has found some incredible power that ties into his boxing perfectly, to where he slept Justin Gaethje and he slept the Korean Zombie, which makes Max Holloway 100% one of the most exciting fighters on the UFC roster, and I think that Max Holloway 100% deserves the spot at number 7. At number 6, I have Sean O'Malley, and you might think that this is crazy to put Sean O'Malley at number 6, but Sean O'Malley is so technical with his striking and is so good everywhere within the UFC octagon that all I gotta say is that Aljamain Sterling knockout, I was absolutely crazy of how he barely moved away from the punch and countered him perfectly down the pipe to absolutely send Sterling down to an oblivion. And the stoppage was, yes, some people can say it's early and some people can say it's late, but ultimately Sterling was getting his face beat in about 20 unanswered strikes by Sean O'Malley. So I don't think it was an awful stoppage, but considering that Sterling was the champion, he could have gone on for a little bit longer. But going back to Sean O'Malley, his fight with Peter Yan was so incredibly fun to watch. His fight against Chito Vera was an absolute domination inside the octagon. And like going back to that Sterling fight, he absolutely beat Sterling to a pulp in that fight. Yes, he might have lost the first round, but nothing really happened in the first round. And that second round knockout really propelled Sean O'Malley to stardom even more than he was prior. And this ranking of number 6 as Sean O'Malley is fully validated by his fighting style. At number 5, we have one of the most wild fighters within the UFC, and that is Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler is such a wild fighter. You look at his fight against Dustin Poirier, his fight with Justin Gaethje, his fight with Tony Ferguson, his fight with Dan Hooker, his fight with Charles Oliveira. Every single fight that Michael Chandler has within the UFC octagon is one of the most wild fights you have ever seen. This man goes in to be killed or to be killed, And Michael Chandler never delivers a subpar performance within the UFC octagon. He is something that truly is crazy because his IQ is so low to where he's one of the greatest wrestlers within the UFC, but he just wants to stand and bang and lose brain cells for you guys just so he can be put on the most entertaining fights. And a fight with Conor McGregor for Michael Chandler would be such an entertaining fight, and I think that would be so crazy because someone would get knocked out in the first round. Michael Chandler's slot at number 5 is 100% validated considering every single fight he's had, he goes in there to be killed or kill. At number 4, I have Dustin Poirier. And Dustin Poirier, you look at this past year, he possibly had fight of the year against Islam Makhachev if it wasn't for Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje. His fight with Benoit Saint-Denis could be fight of the year, and it only lasted 2 rounds with Dustin Poirier getting that knockout. The fight against Justin Gaethje, even though he did get head kick TKO, that was one of the most exciting fights you could put on. His fights with Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler, every single fight that Dustin Poirier does stepping into the octagon, it is an absolute war, and that's why we all love Dustin Poirier as UFC fans. He brings some of the most exciting boxing in the UFC. He holds his own on the ground, and he takes chances within the UFC octagon, and that is ultimately what we want from one of our favorite fighters within the UFC, and that is why he is at number 4 on my list. At number 3 on my list, I got Charles Oliveira, and we all know Charles Oliveira goes in there like Michael Chandler to be killed or get killed. Every single fight that Charles Oliveira has is one of the most fun fights you've ever seen. His fight with Beneil Dariush, where he knocked Beneil Dariush out in the first round. His fight with Michael Chandler, where he possibly lost the first round and he came back in and knocked him out within 30 seconds in the second round. His fight with Justin Gaethje, where that was an absolute brawl for 4 minutes that it lasted. Even the fights where he lost against Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan were some of the best fights of the night on that specific card. Charles Oliveira brings the fight game wherever he goes, and he is one of the most, if not the most exciting fighters within the UFC organization. Every single fight that Charles Oliveira has is beloved by the fans, and every single fan wishes that Charles Oliveira could be fighting on every single card every single weekend, since he is one of the most exciting fighters within the UFC organization. At number 2, I have Alex Pereira, and you look at Alex Pereira's last couple fights, him sending Jamal Hill into the Shadow Realm, the Jiri Prochazka knockout, even him getting knocked out by Israel Adesanya was such a fun fight to watch. His comeback victory over Israel Adesanya, his knockout obliteration of Sean Strickland, and his flying knee over Nikolaitis at his first ever UFC event in Madison Square Garden. Alex Pereira is one of the most special beings on planet Earth in the UFC octagon, and the thing that amplifies how fun he is to watch is his willingness to step in the octagon whenever needed. You look at this fight at UFC 303 that he took on 2 weeks' notice. What fighter takes a fight on 2 weeks' notice? Alex Pereira is a man of the people. He loves to fight, and he's going against this rematch with Jiri Prochazka knowing that one of them is going to get knocked out, and it's not going to be Alex Pereira. That left hook that he has is absolutely deadly, and it's probably the best left hook the UFC has ever seen. Alex Pereira is so good in every single facet of kickboxing, and every single fight that Alex Pereira has is not a boring one. Now, at number 1, it's your favorite fighter's favorite fighter, and that is Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje has some of the most fun fights within the UFC organization. You look at that fight with Michael Chandler, which won Fight of the Year. His 2 fights with Dustin Poirier, the first one that he lost and the second one that he head kicked KO Dustin Poirier, were some of the most incredible fights the UFC has ever seen. His 4-minute war with Charles Oliveira was absolutely incredible. His fight with Eddie Alvarez was absolutely incredible. His fight with Michael Johnson going all the way back was absolutely incredible. And most of his fight with Rafael Fiziev, which I just forgot, was absolutely incredible. And the fight of the year, even though he got knocked out this year against Max Holloway, was something that both fighters were doing. He's the first fighter to knock down Max Holloway, even though the UFC didn't count it. But Justin Gaethje is the most exciting fighter within the UFC organization. Every single time Justin Gaethje steps within the octagon, you all know he's going to war for you guys. He is the most fun fighter, no doubt in my mind, and it just is summed up in one quote that he had prior to his UFC 300 interview, where he pretty much just said, "I don't plan on being alive after the fight." And that is something that Justin Gaethje goes in there and he goes to war just to get the most incredible knockouts and to get some of the most fun fights for fans to see. All right, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA. Please let me know what you think about this list of the most fun fighters within the UFC organization. And if you agree with my list, if you have some changes, please leave a like, comment down below. I try to respond to as many comments as I possibly can. And I love the support that I've been receiving on these videos. We're on the road to 200 subscribers. So please enjoy the content and please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys very, very soon.